What's up, guys? It's Trevy here again from Way of the Swan with the third episode of the What's New in the New Edition video series, talking about all the new cool rules in the third edition of War Machine and Hordes. Today I'm going to be talking about units, and we're going to start off with some crazy field promotion rules. Now, just a little bit of overview. Some of the nomenclature around units changed. The base order that a unit leader or officer can give their unit used to be just a charge order, which would allow your models to run or charge, and now it's called press forward. So obviously way more thematic, really fun to yell at your tiny toy soldiers as they're running across the table, and otherwise it does the exact same thing. It requires them to either run or charge. Additionally, a unit, when you buy a unit, you can have up to one command attachment. Example here is a Stormblade infantry officer. He usually has a standard bearer with him, but I didn't get it out. If a unit has multiple command attachments available, it can only choose one, and it's the same as a unit attachment used to be. It's just called a different thing now. Additionally, you can have weapon attachments, such as a Stormblade Storm Gunner. You can have up to 3 weapon attachments attached to your unit, and if you have multiple weapon attachments available, you can mix and match those. So if for some reason I could add Storm Guard to my unit as a weapon attachment, I could add 2 Storm Guard and 1 Storm Gunner, or vice versa. Any combination of those 3 or those 2. So that's pretty cool. But the big changes I'm going to talk about are in regards to field promotion, which has changed quite a bit from Mark II. So it used to be in Mark II that when your unit leader died or was removed from play, you'd take him off the table, you'd pick another grunt in the unit, and he would assume command of the unit and become the unit leader. If you didn't have any grunts available, you'd pick one of your models, assuming an officer wasn't in the unit, and one of your models would become the unit commander instead. So it still works basically the same way. Once your unit leader is destroyed, then he is field promoted, and that model, if he was field promoted in the same turn that he activates, he has to sacrifice his combat action. So it's a little bit harsher if you are suffering an effect like fire or corrosion, but it ends up being pretty much the same as it used to be in Mark II. Now, notice I did say that if your unit leader was destroyed, he field promotes, because if your unit leader is removed from play or removed from the table via some other effect, he is not field promoted. Instead, assuming you don't have an officer, you would pick another grunt in the unit to assume command. Now, this usually 99% of the time doesn't matter, because most unit leaders in the game are just a cool-looking model who's exactly the same as the rest and just denotes he's in charge. But the reason I'm using Stormblades here, besides the fact that they're super sweet, is that the unit leader of the unit is actually incredibly important to buffing the models around him. He has a 5-inch aura that gives them all +2 to melee and range damage rolls, as well as +2 to the range on their ranged weapons. And there are a couple other unit leaders in the game now who are different from the rest of their unit. A couple examples are Crow and Storm Guard, who always were slightly different than the rest of their unit. They had a different weapon. And off the top of my head, the other one I can think of who was changed in Mark III is the Pharaoh Brigand unit leader. Now has a 2-inch melee range. So if those models are removed from play, they are not field promoted, and you'll lose the benefit of having that unit leader around. So obviously, pretty big deal for a unit like Stormblades that's really relies on this unit leader to stay there. Now, another instance in which this unit leader could be removed and not be field promoted is if he is taken over by a model. So we're going to use Denegra over here. She has Dark Seduction, which lets her pick a model, make a magic attack against it, and then if she passes, she gets to make a full advance and an attack using that model. So let's say we have this Cyclone over here. This is a pretty weird situation, but I think a lot of weird situations like this are going to come up with this new field promotion rule. So this Cyclone put down covering fire. Maybe he doesn't want to get charged by Denegra. He's like, Denegra, stay away. Nobody likes you. And Denegra's very sad about this, so to get vengeance on the Cyclone, she turns around and she casts Dark Seduction on this Stormblade unit leader. Now, what happens is when the Stormblade unit leader is removed from the unit by an effect like this, you would pick another model, assuming this officer wasn't here. You would pick another model to assume command, but he's not field promoted. So we say this guy's the unit leader. These guys are still in formation. They're still going to be affected by spells, but he's not actually the unit leader. He doesn't have the cool stick. Now, in the new rules, if you're destroyed while in the control of the enemy player, you are not field promoted. So if this guy, if Denegra here were to walk this guy right through the covering fire, he gets shot by the cyclone, potentially he dies. And if he dies, this guy's going to remain the commander of the unit until he dies and another model assumes command. But that unit leader bonus is gone. It's just gone forever. There's no unit leader model for that unit anymore. And the Stormblades are very sad because they essentially just get -2 to a bunch of their stats. So obviously a pretty big deal and pretty strange. There might be a couple situations in which it is beneficial for you to kill or to remove from play your unit leader. So as you can see, the new field promotion rules are very strange and open a lot of very weird interactions that can potentially really impact the game if you're able to use them. Another model type that changed pretty significantly in the change between the Mark II and the new edition are cavalry models. Now, cavalry models back in Mark II had a ton of weird superfluous rules that governed their line of sight and allowed them to make special orders and all sorts of crazy things. And I think a lot of people shied away from taking cavalry because they weren't entirely sure what the cavalry rules were and how to best use them. And they were really a finesse option. But now I think in the new edition they're going to be a little bit easier, which is going to be awesome because I love seeing cavalry on the table. Now, I don't think I need all these cavalry models out here, but I do love bringing Striker 3 out because he's so cool. So here he is. Now, the biggest change is that all the two types of cavalry that used to exist are gone. There used to be light cavalry and heavy cavalry, and all cavalry models are now just cavalry. And that gives them a number of generic rules, and then so far, every cavalry model in the game has gained the reposition special rule, allowing them to make a movement at the end of their activation, either 3 inches or 5 inches, generally. Most cavalry that used to be heavy, or normal cavalry, quote-unquote, now has a 3-inch reposition, and all of the cavalry that used to be light cavalry now has a 5-inch reposition. The other thing that changed with cavalry is that they are able to, assuming they didn't charge during their activation, and they're making melee attacks, they're able to make an attack with their mount. It used to be that only light cavalry could do this, or cavalry with combat rider, and now it's just a generic rule that everybody has. So Striker wants to kill some of these blood trackers, he can come over, he can make his melee attack with his sword, maybe at her, and then take his mount attack at a 1/2-inch melee range at her. He uses his mat, obviously, and then uses the power of the mount weapon in order to determine the damage roll. Alternatively, if Striker decides to charge, assuming he goes 3 inches, he can make an impact attack. Now this works basically exactly the same as it used to. He moves up until he contacts a model. Once he does that, he makes a melee attack against everybody in his melee range. If he hits you, you get a damage roll equal to the power of his mount, and it's pretty cool. Now the issue used to be that if a cavalry model did this in Mark II, it could be very bad. So let's say Striker wants to charge this girl right here. He maybe wants to get at a cool angle to get the rest of these models in melee. Something like that. But he wants to also make his impact attack, make sure he has the maximum number of attacks. And he charges over here and makes his impact attack. Now, this seems like a pretty good charge. He's got all these other girls in melee. He's having a good time. Unfortunately, if he decide in Mark II, if he decided to make this impact attack and hit and killed her, the impact attack was resolved before the model's melee, or before the model's movement, his charge movement ended, meaning that he could never be in melee with his charge target. So his charge could technically never succeed, and he would automatically fail, meaning that his horse, having done all of the work, Striker decides to ride off into the sunset and continues his movement, obviously not through models, but continues his movement to the max that his charge distance was, and then he would stop and his activation would be over, and it would be very sad. And as such, nobody impact attacks their charge target, and it made impact attacks a really weird and terrible rule that nobody used. Now, it's changed so that if you decide to impact attack your charge target, so Striker comes in here, hits this girl with his horse, and kills her, as long as he impact attacked while he was in melee range with his charge target, he would not have failed to charge. So he could come in, make his impact attacks, and then make his other attacks into the rest of these blood trackers. So he could make a full activation with doing all sorts of cool things, and still be just fine. A couple other changes to cavalry are that the tall in the saddle rule, which is another one of those weird rules that govern their line of sight, is gone forever. And the ride by attack rule is also removed. So instead it's been replaced by that reposition that all cavalry have innately now. A couple more notes on cavalry before I wrap this video up. Cavalry and units in general. Obviously all of these cavalry notes that I just outlined are the same for all cavalry. They're not just for cavalry units, but I am talking about units a lot in this video. And staying on cavalry just for a bit, the cavalry charge roll, which used to give cavalry +2 to hit, is now instead a boosted attack roll. So on their charge attack, when a cavalry charges a model, Striker comes in here, he wants to charge her. Assuming he doesn't kill her with his impact attack, he can come in and roll 3 dice on his charge attack, and just get a little bit of extra accuracy in there while he's there. One more small change is that the errata, or the rule that was introduced in errata, that specified that units could not be targeted by spells or effects made by friendly models while they were out of formation, has been removed. It's out of the game, so you can target a model with out of formation models with a buff, but most buffs specify that a model or a unit cannot be targeted, or it does not benefit from the buff while out of formation. So that's still not going to benefit you, but it doesn't screw you over if you accidentally mismeasured your control or your command and one model's out of formation or something like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the final video, which will cover terrain and scenarios.